a look at what's happening in Manipur as well. We're now learning essentially a situation where these two warring sides, Varghese, are using quadcopters. I mean, using drones, unmanned aerial vehicles.
So where did they get these drones from?
To target each other.
And look at the sophistication of it. We were thinking they were mobs. They don't seem to be mobs. They seem to be, some kind of trained, some kind of intelligence working in it. Because the use of quadcopters to, in fact, see which village to target, what is the kind of security that is provided.
Just the training of using a quadcopter.
I mean, it shows that this seems to be completely planned. Or there is some kind of planning also happening, and quadcopters are present with both the mobs from both the sides, and they're using that effectively to target those who are not even involved in this kind of violence or those who don't want the violence. So that is actually a cause of concern, that these quadcopters are being used by these mobs to actually target villages, to target or in fact to even find out routes through which they can go where the security presence is not there. So the intensity of the usage of these drones is this thing.
Certainly, and the quadcopters, the questions that are now coming about, about arms recovery, we still don't know how many arms are still with the people. Kuldeep Singh, the chief security advisor, earlier, back about, let's say a month and a half back, he would put out those numbers every day, but that bulletin has stopped coming anymore because, well, the numbers weren't really explaining what kind of situation was happening on the ground. We've seen the chief minister's appeal to step down. We've seen clashes. We've seen Rahul Gandhi visiting that place. We've seen the Congress party calling the Prime Minister out for not visiting that place. The Home Minister was there. And there is firing every day, deaths happening. A week will go by and suddenly you'll see somebody's been burnt and hacked to death in front of their family members. What is the way out? I mean, we're looking at 3 months plus of this conflict. We'll soon be at 100 days. What's the conflict out? Do you remember why all of this started? I mean, there are historically socio-economic fault lines at play, but it all began with that demand of reservation. The Métis demanding that scheduled tribe status, and the Cookies and the tribals saying that, look, man, don't even think about it.
See,
and
the issue
shouldn't
is
we circle back to that
any
problem
community
again?
can, in this country, any community can ask for reservation, they can push for it, they can be, trying to get it. We cannot restrict anything because it's part of the democratic process. And those communities have an issue with it also, can use the democratic process to vouch their concerns about it. Of course, there were the courts, there were higher courts as well, where the issues could have been taken up, and this could have been amicably seen through the due process of law and administration. But the shocking part of this, Kabir, is that if this has led to a violence like this, the issue is that the violence started in May 3rd, and we have almost seen 2 months of this violence unabated, sometimes erratic, sometimes planned, sometimes a series of protests that stopped from any sort of help coming to people, and the administration is struggling to restore law and order on the ground. So as of now, when we see this kind of a situation developing in Manipur, the question is, how can you bring them onto the negotiating table? How can you ask both the community leaders to come on the table and to use their influence on their people to say that it's time to push violence to the backseat? It's not the issue. It's not what has to be taken up right now. There are huge problems that are there. The government is trying to bring some kind of semblance of normalcy by trying to, reopen schools and let it function. But again, there are concerns in certain areas where the violence has been quite intense, where the schools can be reopened in those areas. The government has also asked its employees to come back and report for duty, especially the state employees, because they want to bring in the government services also back. So there is an attempt to push in some kind of normalcy as fast as possible. But then there are these concerns that how long, and what about these areas where, the situation is quite intense, especially the violence is intense, the ethnic conflicts are intense, and also the populations are interspersed in such a manner where the tensions will keep on building and the cycle of violence keeps building up. So, as you rightly pointed out, the guns issues is again a big issue that is there, because recently also there was an attempt to loot the armory, and then you have the Jawan who was on the ground trying to do something of it. And then we had the internet ban that has been partially lifted. The government has been given control to, keep an eye on it as well.
That's only because the Manipur High Court, which I'm reading about after a very long time, I mean, they did seek a fresh report, but it all started with the Manipur High Court telling the government to, well, you know what, boss, start thinking about this ST demand that the Methi community has been asking for the longest time, which is when that peaceful tribal solidarity march was taken out in the hills, and the violence ensued ever since the early days of May. Now, Manipur High Court directed the government to partially lift the internet ban in the state. So, the Manipur High Court has directed the state government to partially lift the internet ban in the state by providing services through internet lease line, subject to restriction to be decided by an expert committee. Now, this order was passed by the court on Friday last week while hearing a set of petitions against the suspension of internet services after violence broke out in the state. The court stated that it is of the view that its directions would be in the interest of the public to mitigate their hardships in the face of the complete ban of internet services in place in the state since the 3rd of May, while at the same time ensuring the security of the state and safety of the life and properties of the citizens. It's also directed the Home Department to lift the ban on providing internet service through internet lease line, which is the ILL, after ensuring that the stakeholders have complied with a set of safeguards recommended by an expert committee. Now, what are these safeguards going to be? We've got another committee, a peace panel, a government panel, an expert panel, a special investigation team. I mean, I'm just looking at too many teams at play over here. What's next, Varghese? What's next? I mean, I know we're running out of time here, and violence in Manipur is something that is not new. But now quadcopters being used, incessant firing that's taking place. These clashes, one doesn't even know, I mean, if these clashes are taking place every day or not, but one knows for a fact that there are guns, sophisticated machine guns that are with the warring sides, the two sides, the factions that are at loggerheads with each other, the Cookies, the tribals, and the Metis on the other hand. What's next according to you, and then we'll wrap this up.
Well, right now there is only no other option but to go for negotiations. But before negotiations happen, the guns have to go out of circulation. But before the guns go out of circulation, there should be law and order established. So there is a huge responsibility on the security forces, on the paramilitary forces, and on the government to establish law and order. Once the law and order is established, they'll have to get the people to surrender their guns, even if it means it was licensed for a while. Let the guns go completely out of circulation in Manipur. After which, they'll have to get the leaders to speak with each other. There should be another peace committee that is much more amiable, that is to be organized, and this peace committee should bring in some kind of influence to restore peace. There are confidence building measures should be initiated between the Cookies as well as the Metis as fast as possible. The confidence should be even built up on the fact that those who are responsible for some kind of the violence, they are also brought to book. So it is going to be a series of CBMs that have to be built. Confidence building measures should be put in place in such manner that there is peace between both the communities, and it is also we have to ensure that motor-mouth netas who have the ability to stoke violence, they should be given a complete structure saying that action will be taken against them. And as we know, the government of Manipur as well as the court is also monitoring that kind of possibility of flaring up violence. They are looking at that quite closely, whether it's in the media. They're also closely scrutinizing the people who are also speaking on it. But at the same time, the negotiation channel should be kept open, right, and there should be these leaders who have influence on both the communities to be brought in first, so that this kind of a peace can, the peace process can go ahead, which has been stalled completely, and we cannot let this go. But the government is trying to bring in some kind of semblance of, normalcy, but it is a very difficult task ahead because there's so much of trust deficit, and that trust deficit can be kind of built up only if you have more CBMs in place.